welcome to the Charles Vanhorn Show. Today is Thursday, July the 23rd. Here are a few of today's headlines. The coronavirus is surging across the United States, and the president is now taking it seriously. Good luck with that. Congress is debating whether a second stimulus is needed. Some Republicans are rejecting another stimulus. The president is now a believer in wearing face masks. And last but not least, the president will send more federal agents to intimidate, agitate, and harass protesters in various cities throughout the U.S. You would really have to be someone with a very low IQ to not see what is obvious. We have 103 days before the November elections, and the president and his goon squad are not pulling any punches. And if you are a student of history, you will really understand that the president is following Nixon's playbook. He has now draped himself in the American flag, and he has become the law and order president. That's kind of funny when you think about it. A man who doesn't want anyone to see his taxes, a man who doesn't want anyone looking at what he does that is unlawful, a person who does not want any oversight, now has become the caricature for law and order. That's funny when you think about it. A person who despises any type of law now wants to become the law and order candidate for president? Really? This is all about Trump's reelection. And it is the best way to scare some people. And I mean some white people. You have to really scare them that we're now in a time of civil unrest and that somebody is coming to take something away from you or to do harm to you and your family. When you really can't run on your issues such as a good economy or you can't run on that you are in control of the coronavirus, you hype up something fearful, you hype up, unrest throughout the country. And it is done basically to create an atmosphere of unrest so that the president and his millions begin to paint a dark portrait of America. And they paint this portrait very, very darkly. And they say that if Trump is not reelected, is that the scariest things that you have ever imagined will actually come a reality. And so they carefully craft this message, and they make the bleak portrait come alive by adding fuel to the fire. So they go in like places like Portland, Oregon. And when they go to Oregon, they actually decide to bring about what I would say peace. They decide to bring about calm in a situation which was really starting to die out. The elected officials there in Portland already had a plan in place. Police had backed off and they were going to let the protesters simply, leave peacefully. They already had established their presence there. They were doing all the necessary things to bring the situation under control. But here comes Trump and his federal posse. And once you bring in federal troops en masse to an area such as Portland, Oregon, or Chicago, and other places throughout the city, you only exacerbate those problems, and you cause the people who live there to become very angry, and they come out in droves to protest. And this is what Trump loves. He loves that confrontation between his forces, his patrol forces, and the local residents of these cities. And I want you to understand that even when you have peaceful protests, there will always be a few agitators among the crowd. During the civil rights, you had agitators mixed in among the peaceful protesters. During the time when Malcolm X was assassinated, there was some agitators mixed in among the crowd. And I believe even if you believe in the story where Jesus was betrayed by one of his followers, there will always be someone who blend in but will always have an ulterior motive. They are similar to wolves who blend in with sheep only to take one of the sheep out during the time when the rest of the herd is not really paying attention. These agitators are involved in graffiti and destroying governmental property and muddling the message of Black Lives Matter. And this only helps the president's cause, and he labels the entire movement as a group of terrorists and anarchists. And since he is running as this president of law and order, he is actually shaping this message to his followers that he's doing something about the uprising. And he's actually targeting, and he has made this quite clear, that he is targeting in this crackdown blacks and Mexicans who are out of control. He said that there are people coming across the border, Mexicans, and that there are blacks who are on the left wing of the party who are out of control. Now, there are no federal troops going into Republican areas. Remember now that there are groups who march to the Capitol. There are groups who storm through the Capitol in their areas with guns, but the president does not actually see them as a threat. He sees them as good people because most of them are his supporters. So I want you to understand and keep this in mind. This is the president's backdrop for his sprint to the finish line. Do I believe he's a racist? Yes. He has proven to us unapologetically that he is who he is. He is a white nationalist. And as Maya Angelou once said, when people show you who they are, believe them. Believe them the first time. The president has said countless times when he came down the elevator that he believed that the people who are seeking asylum here in this country, they bring with them disease, they bring with them problems that would be better left where they are. And he has no empathy for people who are suffering. He's not that type of person. He has no empathy, and neither does he have any sympathy. He doesn't care who lives or dies. As long as he holds on to power, he will do whatever is necessary to achieve that outcome. But the question must be asked, who are we as Americans if we allow him to succeed? If he succeeds, then it says a lot about us as a country, that we are more racist than we really imagined ourselves to be. But if we actually vote him out of office, and those numbers have to be gigantic. It can't be just a 1 percentage point that he loses. He must lose royally. And it must be such a loss that there is no question that he has been rejected. That is the only loss that will count. It must be one that actually forces him to accept the reality. Now, I want you to keep in mind that these federal agents who are storming through cities, arresting people, are working on behalf of the administration. They're all part of this deception. When they arrest these people, they're arresting them sometime without even giving them a reason as to why they're being arrested. And they're placing them in black vans and taking them to undisclosed locations. Let your mind go back for a few years, a few decades, and remember when America prided itself as being the city on top of a hill. They prided themselves as being a moral compass in the world, and they would condemn the actions such as taking place with troops storming the streets and arresting citizens. They would condemn these actions when they were done by other countries that we said were run by dictators and strongmen and communists. But the actions of the president, in my opinion, are no different than the actions of those we once condemned. Am I right? Think about it. What the strongmen did to quell the voice of the people, the protesters, sometimes they went out with rubber bullets, and sometimes they were actual live ammunition. They quelled the voice of protest and held on to power. So if you look at it, what Trump is doing, he's doing the same thing. He actually is quelling the voice of protest by bringing in the military. He brought in the military, and the military decided, hey, we shouldn't be doing this, and they sort of saying we won't do this. So Trump decided to go out and get federal agents from Homeland Security and other various departments and deputize them as law enforcement. And so they're actually doing the job of police when the police actually don't need their help. The state or the city didn't request this. This is an overreach of the federal government imposing itself in cities across America. But keep in mind, they're mainly democratic states and democratic cities. I want you to know another thing. When a strong man is taking over a country, they're not concerned about a constitution. A lot of Americans think that the Constitution is like a bulwark that will keep a strong man from actually destroying it. The Constitution is meaningless when there is no law. So the courts refuse to hold the president accountable for his actions. Congress can't hold him accountable. His own party can't hold him accountable. So he is actually a president who is above the law. And since they have allowed this to go on for so long, it would be almost stupid for them to try to now come against the president when he has all the power. Really, he has all of the cards. And I believe he's trying to hold on to this power come hell or high water. And so for all of you who are still believing in the Constitution, this Constitution is useless when the president is using it to simply wipe his rear end. I don't know how this fall election will play out, but the groundwork by this administration is already in play. And all you have to do is just pay attention to what he says. He actually tells the truth even when he's telling lies. Because if he loses, he will say that the voting system or mail-in ballots were rigged and that there have been people voting who shouldn't have been voting. There have been people voting twice. There have been people manipulating the system. He will find fault with the very system that was used to elect him as the president. But if he wins, he will say that he actually thwarted the attempts of those who tried to rig the elections. Now, keep in mind that a lot of this is really just smoke and mirrors. It is simply a way to distract us from what is really happening right in front of our faces. I want you to focus right now on something that I said earlier about the coronavirus surging across the country. Remember, the United States is the hot spot of the world. We have more cases than any other country in the world. And so come election day, The death toll from the coronavirus is expected to be around 250,000 Americans who have lost their lives to the virus. And I want you to understand the president is playing politics with the lives of Americans. It's not to say that past presidents haven't played politics, but Trump and this administration is playing it on a different level. They're not really concerned about the lives that are lost because they came late to this game to actually help and to diminish the pain that would be inflicted by this pandemic. They came very late to the table. They knew back in 2019 that the coronavirus was actually on the rise. They knew that the pandemic had been lost over there in China. They knew that this thing was going to spread, but they sat around and did nothing from January until now, and now they're trying to act as if they are on top of it. But really, it's out of control. And if you test more Americans, you will find out that more Americans are infected than the numbers really show. All of us could actually be infected. We could be carriers and really don't have the symptoms. But I want you to understand that if you do nothing, nothing will be achieved. So the president is now playing the long game. He's playing the game for the distraction. He's in the fourth quarter and we're now on full distraction. He is distracting us from the loss of American lives and their inability to actually, as an administration, be on top of this. He doesn't want you to understand that this administration has failed us when it comes to protecting the American public. They have failed in their duty, and now he must put the blame on someone else. So guess what? The president is already saying he bears no responsibility for this, and he is already shifting the responsibility to state and local governments. Someone must be the scapegoat, because the president really makes no mistakes. So it has to be someone else who dropped the ball. And if there's anyone who's willing for him to drive the bus over, they might as well start laying down on the ground, because he will drive the bus over them and make them the sacrificial lamb. I want you to let your mind go back when the president said in the earlier months that it was only one or two people who were exposed with the virus. I want you to remember that he said this thing would probably magically disappear. I want you to remember and let your minds just roll back the tape. I know he says a lot, but let your mind roll back. He said that come the summertime, like most viruses, the heat will probably kill it, and we will return to normal, and pretty soon it will just disappear. This president will never admit to being wrong. Let me repeat it. He will never admit to being wrong. He said from the beginning that he hates losers. He hates losers, so he hates to admit that he is a loser, because he has not been honest with the American people, and he has not really been the type of president to just sit in front of the camera and say, America, we're going through a black period in our history. There will be a lot of lives lost. And I'm here to tell you that as a government, we will do what is necessary to get through this. We will tackle this thing head on. We will do whatever within our power, whatever is within our power to make this thing less egregious than it is. But trust me, this is a worldwide pandemic, and we will put all of our resources behind it. No, he didn't do that. The president played politics. He tried to bring about calm when there was really no need for that message because the cat was already out of the bag. And sometimes, I wonder, we voted for this guy and he became the president, even though he was not someone who was morally, part of the religious right. He was not in their eyes the champion that they really wanted, but he was the vessel that they needed. They needed Supreme Court judges. They needed federal judges. They needed him to be the vehicle in which to carry out their right-wing agenda. So even though he was a flawed candidate, they got behind him and they held their nose and closed their eyes and voted yes for him. So they're allowing him a lot of leeway to do things that are un-American simply because he has given them what they for years desired: a right-wing agenda. And sometimes I look at this as America really brought this pain upon itself because of how the system of inequality and systematic racism was created from the beginning. You cannot deny the majority the privileges afforded to the few and expect the system to continue to run smoothly. There will always be a reckoning, and the time for change is way overdue. We've been talking about change from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, early part of the 2000s. That time for talk is over. What we need now is action, and that is the reason people are in the street protesting. That is the reason they're demanding change. I don't know, as I've said earlier, what will happen between now and Election Day, and what happens is anyone's guess, but come November the 3rd, I want you to go ahead and mark my words. You can stick a pin in this if you want this podcast. Because come November the 3rd, there will be issues. We will have major issues on November the 3rd. Yes, the vote will take place, but we will not know for weeks, maybe even months, if Trump or Biden won, because the outcome will be yet to be determined. That will be the status, yet to be determined. Because you will have a flood of mail-in ballots, you will have a flood of overseas ballots, flood of absentee ballots, and all of this is going to take time to count. And you're going to have some discrepancies within the system. Trust me, it may be even worse than the Bush-Gore election of 2000. Well, my time is up now. Welcome again to my show, and thanks for listening. If you would like, follow me on Twitter, Facebook, or subscribe to my channel on YouTube. So until next time, stay safe, stay informed, and keep fighting for equality.